Good evening, Santa Cruz County and beyond at communitytv.org. This is Voices from the Village. My name's Sandino Gomez. Good evening, and tonight's topic of the Voices from the Village show is going to be post-election results, analyzing everything from the local city council races and the local measures up to the county supervisor race, looking at some statewide ballot initiatives, how they fared here in California, maybe talk about a couple other significant ones across the United States. And then we'll eventually move on into a little bit of national politic and talk about some of the whole larger picture. With us tonight are three great local organizers and one candidate and a bunch of different folks here to just talk about some of the results, as I said. But of course, before we go around and introduce everyone, why don't we cut to what you had to say, Santa Cruz, about the local election and the whole larger democratic project that is our electoral system. So we'll be right back after this short segment from you.
This is Voices from the Village. We're in downtown Santa Cruz, and we're asking people, what does democracy mean to you?
Democracy to me would be a third party or a fourth party or a fifth party. There's my answer. A third or fourth or fifth party would be democracy.
The freedom of speech to allow other people to know what you're truly thinking so that we can discern what is best for our community. The election just now surprised me. I thought it did well at bringing the best of what I think is our democratic system together. Some of the different states had voted on some things that were surprising to me, but I think very healthy, and I'm encouraged and I'm hopeful.
What it means for me is that I can exist in this society and be free, and I'm able to express whatever I want to express whenever I want to express it. And some people might think that's wrong, some people might not, but that's just personal freedom. So I guess democracy is personal freedom.
It means that I showed up at 7:30 at the election polling station, and everybody was excited. Sweet old ladies high-fived me. It was a party, and it didn't matter who you were voting for. It was that we got to show up, and I felt great all day, and I voted for the right guy.
I don't know, be it switching your bank to something local, be it, voting with your dollars, being that type of thing. That, to me, that plays into democracy in such a way that, I don't know, maybe voting you don't feel that as immediately as you do as, contributing to a local business that you support, or where they treat you well, or you see that person come into the business you work at that is also local. That's what I feel that through that we can see the change that we want to be, or that we want to start to experience. So we're at a teetering point where it's easy to feel hopeless, but I think it can change.
Well, democracy to me means consent. First off, I think that's a huge thing. Equality. People coming together who are going to be affected by the laws and making decisions for themselves and consenting to what they agree to and the repercussions of that. I think that's something that we've lost in our current form of alleged democracy. Right now I'm actually attending a case for Linda LeMaster on the 647 East lodging ban, and it's extremely interesting because the judge is trying to say, don't worry about the First Amendment of the United States Constitution because it doesn't apply. It's still ruled as irrelevant to the protests. And the 2010 peace camp, which is what Linda LeMaster is being tried for, was to protest the injustice of not being allowed to sleep anywhere on public or private property. And it's something I urge the public to look into, because our civil rights are being stripped one by one. And if we don't take a stand on that and work together, then we're going to end up in some very bad space. And I think that democracy essentially means involvement from the community.
That's what people had to say on downtown Santa Cruz. Back to you in the studio.
There you go, Santa Cruz. Your wide and varied opinion about what exactly democracy means to you and kind of the good, the bad, the highs, the lows, the in-betweens. Let's launch into our panel here and start with introductions. To my right is Matilda Rand, and she was working with the right to vote on DSAL, also known as Measure P. Welcome to the show, Matilda.
Thank you.
And to her right, we have Micah Posner. He is a council member-elect, former candidate, but now future council member. Welcome to the show, Micah.
Thanks, Andino.
And to his right, we have Paul Johnston, a street sociologist and community organizer here in the greater Santa Cruz County area, operating on a lot of different political campaigns and issues. Welcome to the show, Paul.
You can call me that. That's good.
Okay, well,
sure.
I want to be accurate here. I want to go for the correct thing here. So, why don't we just start here locally with the city council race? Micah, congratulations on your victory.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think all of us here at this table could safely say we're glad to see that you won. And,
Yeah.
you're going to be bringing kind of some of the values that I could personally say that I believe in and that I'm excited to see represented on the council.
Yeah, well, I'm a little relieved,
Yeah.
a little tired.
Probably pretty exhausting.
Yeah, pretty exhausted. But really proud. I mean, we ran a great campaign. It was based on values and based on excitement and reaching out to voters directly. We had 22 neighborhood meetings and a very young volunteer campaign staff. I mean, it wasn't all young. Bruce Van Allen was a big part of it, who's a real experienced campaigner, but a lot of my volunteers were like in their 20s and 30s, and they kept me hoping, they kept me alive and hopeful because, that was kind of my goal, was to sort of refresh and reinvigorate and bring a new generation of values up there.
What would you say were some of those values? Like, what are the things you think people connected with in the community that helped get you elected?
Well, I mean, we definitely talked about specific issues, and so one thing was having a limit to the amount of money we spent, and people really resonated about that. And I'm proud that my campaign brought that up. It was a hard issue to bring up because there's no specific constituency group that benefits from it. It's not like this helps the businesses or this helps the environmentalists or whatever. It's a systemic thing, So, and we made it a campaign issue. I warned the other candidates before we started that I was going to make it a campaign issue, and we did, and people resonated with it. I think making it clear that the environment and the economy can support each other and coexist. I mean, I'm a environmentalist, environmental activist, but I got the most votes in the beach flats in the Lower Ocean neighborhood, and I had some specific proposals about how to help everyday people economically with small-scale development and employment. I was the only candidate endorsed by the Building Trades Association, so I think that was really a potent message that I called it the Blue-Green Alliance. I was really excited when I got more excited when that breadth of people endorsed me and started working with me. So yeah, I think those things, the idea of workers in the environment working together and having limits. I'm well known for walking my talk. I mean, when I was a bike activist, I didn't drive.
Biking your bike?
Biking my bike, right? So I think sort of bringing that message, in there that.
And when are you going to hit the ground running? When are you going to be seated?
I think it's in a few weeks. I don't know. I've been relaxing.
Take the weekend off and then.
Yeah, right. I still haven't gone surfing. I told myself I'd go surfing as soon as the campaign was over. So I've just been sleeping and taking care of the kids.
Any reflections on kind of what you might have done differently? I mean, I know you do have your family. You do help run the Santa Cruz Pedicab. I mean, it must have been quite a handful. And I'm just curious, like, what you thought you did well, and what magic balls, or maybe your re-election campaign, what would you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm really proud of the campaign, and a lot of the credit goes to Jacqueline Seidel, my campaign manager. You hire a 22-year-old to run your campaign, and you think, well, I'm sure that, you don't know exactly how much they'll do, but she really coordinated all the volunteers and added just a ton of energy and enthusiasm to the campaign. Some minor things like, I would invite more people to each have less neighborhood gatherings, invite more people, so more people showed up, because we'd have these neighborhood gatherings, we'd invite like 500 people and then like 3 people would show up. So next time I'd invite 2,000 people and just have a few less of them. But But it was still great to feel like, in each neighborhood we were reaching out to people. I think people appreciated that we reached out to them, even if they didn't, all show up.
Do you already have an idea of what you might focus on first?
Well, first, I need to just figure out how the city works and create relationships with the other council members. I wasn't endorsed by any of them, and I have a really, I'm not one to, I've been one to speak my mind, so I'm not worried that I won't speak my mind and find issues. I'm more concerned about really helping to understand what the culture's like and finding common ground with the other council members and getting to know the staff. That's really my job right now, is to figure out how it works and how I can collaborate with people. I'm sure I'll speak my mind, don't worry. It tends to happen.
Yeah, it's one thing to be the outside agitator, and then now you're going to be very much on the inside of the process. So good luck with the entire thing, and really, you had my vote.
It's not just good luck, man. I got to keep. Council members are only successful in as much as they work with the community, and it's basically another part of being an organizer, as far as I view it. And that's how I ran. I said I was going to be you're an advocate on the city council, an activist council member. So don't be leaving me, Sandino. We all need to be working together. So I'll be ready to play my part.
I have a torch ready to hold it by your feet.
Nice. Right, I was going to say that.
Awesome. That's what it needs, right?
Matilda or Paul, any other thoughts on the local elections? The city council races in particular, or maybe, I know we can get into Measure P unless there's anything else you wanted to say on the city council races.
Yeah, it was interesting that you said about the money. It was surprising to me that 3 or 4 of the people that ran for city council did not.
3 said no, 5 said yes to adhere to the spending limits.
So 3 people did not, and I always find it disappointing. We're Santa Cruz, and we have, for a reason, we have a spending limit.
Right.
And I always like to work with people, who run for city council, who do that, because it means that everyone is able to run.
Right. To be fair to them, just to say it out loud, now that we're done making an issue of it, all the candidates agreed to only accept a certain amount of money per person, $325.
No, that's not what people agree upon. That's the rule.
Right.
That is laid upon by the county.
By the county.
You cannot spend.
Right.
You cannot receive any more than $325.
I just want to make it clear to people that people that didn't agree to the limit, it wasn't that they were corruptly influenced by huge
taking
business.
thousands from anyone.
Right. But I do agree with you, Matilda. Obviously, I made it a campaign issue that there should be a limit. There needs to be boundaries. Because otherwise, it just comes down to who can raise the most money. I'm a good fundraiser. I raised $50,000 a year for People Power, and I raised every dollar right up to that limit. So, but I feel like if it's sort of a contest or a game, the rules should be the same. We should just shove a boundary.
It is interesting to note that of the 4 candidates who won, 2 chose to accept the limits and chose not to accept the limits. So you have a balance of strong organizing and community-based efforts versus perhaps just, not to say that the other candidates didn't have that as well, but certainly one of the candidates got close to $40,000 spent, which is above and beyond almost $15,000 the state or not the state, the city limits.
Right. She also ran a really good ground campaign. She had a lot of volunteers. But obviously I feel strongly about the limit. And people first started going over it like 8 years ago, and no one made an issue of it. And like I said, I warned all the other candidates. It's like that's the kind of stuff that democracy is supposed to focus on. I told them I was going to make an issue of it, and I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
I think, I think it was great that you won. First of all, it's really good to see somebody who we can definitely identify as a progressive leader, who will stand up for the values that progressive Santa Cruz cares about on the council. But the reality is that our council is dominated not by progressives, and you're going to be. We lost a couple of strong progressive votes that were turned out this time around, and now I think Micah's going to need the support of the progressive community, because the overwhelming majority of that council is, it's this kind of thing that happens in a town that is overwhelmingly democratic, that the kinds of interests that traditionally are expressed in the Republican Party, sort of a superficial notion of economic development, business development, and a sort of a knee-jerk law enforcement mentality gets taken up by Democrats. And we unfortunately have a majority on the city council that sees that as being the direction that they have to provide, and they lack the sort of deeper environmentalism and the other social justice concerns that we progressives care about so much. And we really have our work cut out for us, I think. I wish we could have had 3 Micah Posners elected this time around, and perhaps 2 years from now we'll be able to do that.
The other thing I want to say about the local election, which I think might be a good lead-in, is that I think one of the reasons I won was because of Measure P. I mean, I'd go door to door.
You were the one city council candidate, I think, or one of the few that took a good, strong stance in favor of.
No, there were.
Were there others?
Oh yeah,
Correct.
absolutely.
Okay, well, please correct me.
Absolutely. Steve Plage and Fasari, Jake Fasari, and CC, yes, and then also Paula Comstock to a certain degree. So no, there was
Pamela.
Oh, sorry.
No,
I didn't say Pam.
Same difference.
Okay, good. So yeah, no, and that's true. And of course, you were on the progressive door hanger, which Measure P was on too. So Measure P campaign hung a lot of door hangers, which also meant that a lot of us then, whether willingly or not, we were also.
Well, it was willingly. Come on,
but we had you. You were on there, and Measure P was on there, and that it strengthened each other. Right. I think.
I think so too. I mean, I know that Pamela was willing to. She's willing to see what the community thinks.
Yes.
Which I appreciate. But I was the one candidate, or the one candidate that ran a big campaign, who just straight up said, I think desal's a bad idea. And it was amazing. I mean, I'd knock on a door and people would say, well, what do you think about desal? I'd say, I think it's a bad idea. And they'd say, I'm voting for you, Yeah. And I think people really appreciate the fact that I didn't just say, well, we'll see how it goes. We'll check out the EIR or whatever. I actually ventured an opinion. And I always said, and I'll say now on television, that if the voters vote for desal, of course I'll make sure it gets built. I mean, I'll be a public servant. But I think it behooves people to have opinions,
right.
Especially about, the biggest community conversation that we're going to be engaged in the next 2 years.
So maybe you could just, for those who don't know, recap really quick.
Right, and I also want to say Steve Plage was actually very actively involved early on.
Absolutely.
So Measure P, as I hope most people know by now, because they voted on it, but and 71% of people voted for it. And it only said, let's have the right to vote.
Right.
It wasn't an up and down vote about desal.
Had nothing to do with whether the plant would be built or not.
We set that up on purpose because there is so much more to learn for people. But we wanted to make sure that it was a guaranteed vote, not just after we had done work for about a year. I came on July of last year. We worked on it for about a year and did an ordinance, but then got rejected because we are a city charter. And so it was known that we were going to ask for a guaranteed right to vote on it. And it was unfortunate that city council did not listen to say, okay, let's, only after we had started the whole campaign with the petition drive. Only then, it was actually 2 weeks after we had started it, they came forward with a ordinance. And it's really too bad that that happened. It didn't pay off for them to do that because people really wanted to have a guaranteed right to vote, which means it's in the charter. It's in the charter.
Can't be changed by a future council. It has to be changed, if anything, by the electorate.
Exactly.
Right.
And so,
stronger
and that's
statement.
all it said. And 71% of the people, first we had to gather signatures, and we did 15% of the then voters of Santa Cruz. They signed, and now 71% of the voters said yes. Let's have that right.
Why do you think there was such a strong showing? 71%. I mean, that's a landslide in any election.
Yeah. Why? Give me an answer. I think people got it. They got it that if you have something that is so big, costs more than $120 million just to build alone. It takes a lot of money to maintain it. Then it also takes 10 times as much energy to make a gallon of drinking water from seawater than we do it, presently. And then we don't know about the environmental impact.
We know it makes 10 times the amount of CO2, greenhouse gases, per gallon because it's directly related to energy.
Exactly. So there were just so many questions. For me, there are so many questions. I am with you. If in the end, people have researched it, you know, done their homework, and say, well, this is what we need in our present situation, then there isn't any one of us who says, no, you can't have it, because we say no. No, we say, ask all the questions, do all the conservation, do all the development of the water transfers with SoCal.
Right.
Do all of that.
Ground aquifer recharge.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And you know, groundwater recharge. And you know, don't forget that we're going to see a video in a moment. There is, I think, 90% of the water that the rain in the winter that falls and gets in the rivers, it goes straight to the ocean. We got to do something with that.
Right.
And so there are quite a number of people with ideas on a county level and engineers who say there is so much more we can do to get our water, our drinking water, without a desal plant. So I'd like to have all of those questions answered before I would say, let's do a desalination plant.
Paul?
A thing to keep in mind, I think, well, again, I guess in the same vein, there was no or very little organized opposition to Measure P. The real battle is yet to come, I think, because there'll be a lot of money spent, there'll be a sense of crisis created, and when the vote happens, which the council had said it was going to do anyway, they kind of positioned themselves to try to take the upper ground on that. When that vote happens, it's going to be very important that we be ready to win. And that means, I think, again, the progressive, environmentally responsible community being well-informed and organized. And it probably also means spending more time thinking not only about what's wrong with a monstrous desalination, expensive desalination plant, but also coming up with positive strategies for alternatives to desalination, which might help to stimulate our economy, a blue-green, kind of economy, to make Santa Cruz into more of into a place that nurtures that kind of business development. Right.
It would provide a lot of jobs. I mean, in SoCal, which is SoCal Water District, is ahead of Santa Cruz in its conservation measures. And it provides jobs. Yeah. It provides jobs. I mean, what they've done, replaced most of the toilets already and other fixtures. I'm sure they've fixed leaks. One of the things that was a mind-boggler for me in the beginning when I started learning about what was going on is that from the creek that we get, I think it's the North Coast Creek, it goes through pipes, comes to us. There is an enormous amount of water leaking.
Right, so it needs to be repaired.
It needs to be repaired. And then if the question was, when is it going to be repaired? Well, 2015, 2016. And I thought, if that was in my house,
right.
I would fix that leak.
Right.
And I know it takes, it's engineering and all that, but really, where is the focus? Is the focus building something right away, or are we going to do all the things that are necessary? And, I have friends who say they have a heck of a time to use their gray water because it isn't allowed. Gray water from your washing machine and from the kitchen, and use that on your plants. And people say, why can't I do that? And the technology is here, and it's low-tech technology. It's easy to maintain. It doesn't require a lot of electronics. So
kind of easy to forget that most of the world's population lives on very little water.
Yes.
Every day, and here we are arguing about our entitlement to hundreds of gallons per person. It kind of is mind-boggling to think how much more conservation and efficiency we really could do when it comes down to it.
Well, and the interesting thing is that this Thursday, and maybe Ken, if you could put the this slide up for the workshop that's on Thursday, It's a workshop with workmen on Thursday, November 15th at the Mid-County Senior Center, 829 Bay Avenue. Thank you. And so the concept, this person is, one of the things he's presenting is a cap and trade style solution to water markets. And I'd never heard of that. It sounds very interesting to me. So what he would say, what he would do is give everybody 55 gallons per person a day. And then if you use less than that amount, then you can sell or donate your surplus for those who want to use more. And it's, you know, it's like we give the control to the local people, saying, this is how much you have, use it, sell it, donate it, whatever you want with it.
Definitely seems like, you know, from Measure P's results that people really do want to be involved in the decision of whether their water is going to be used or not. You know, it seems there are definitely a lot more solutions, I think, that haven't been explored.
Exactly.
That's something that sounds very democratic and interesting to me.
So that's one thing people can do. Now, the other thing that people can do is, if that's what you're asking us, is
watch your video.
Yeah, but let me say one more thing.
Okay, one more thing. We just got to get.
Because one of the things that's happening also, it was also mind-boggling to me, was that the university wants more water from Santa Cruz to grow. And so on one hand, the city says, we don't have enough water, so let's get a desal plant. On the other hand, it says, oh, university, we have enough water for you to grow. So one of the other things that people can do is go to the LAFCO meetings.
Okay.
And the next one is on December 5th.
Local Area Formation Committee.
Exactly. On December 5th at 9:30 at the county building on the 5th floor. And I would say go and learn more about the relationship water and UCSC and growth.
Yeah, certainly.
So
certainly. I do want to let our viewing public know that this is a live call-in show, November 10th. 11th. Veterans Day. 2012, Veterans Day.
After the 6th.
Oh my goodness, they all just blur after a while. Right. But you can call in at 831-425-8844 on any of the things we've talked about so far. But I do believe that we have a video that you helped produce, correct?
Yeah.
Want to introduce this segment for us?
Sure.
What are we about to see?
So Russ Brochet, a local artist, came to me and he said, I want to do a music video with local artists based on the song, This Land Is Your Land. And it's about water, it's about desal, it's about the ocean. And so we created this video, and it has a lot of information in it and some great local artists.
Okay, well, I have a chance to see this, so we're in for a treat. This is, what's the title again?
Clear and Free.
Clear and Free.
Arlo Guthrie would be proud.
He would be.
All we can own is what we leave behind. And if we care to save this place, now's the time.
This rain is our rain, this sea is our sea, the San Lorenzo and the branch of 40, and from Loch Lomond down to the ocean, we'll keep the water flowing clear and free.
As I was watching that river rolling, I thought of the people there
This is our sea, the San Lorenzo and the branch of 40, and from Loch Lomond down to the ocean, we'll keep the water flowing clear and free.
As I was painting down by the levee, phantom footsteps I heard behind me, spirits dancing of the Ohlone. They'll keep the water flowing clear and free.
Our sons and daughters play in the water that was swarming by their grandmothers. Sisters and brothers, let's help each other to keep the water flowing clear and free. This is my home beneath these redwood trees. 1,000 years that made music with the breeze. Sand and God down through history. Let's keep their water flowing clear and free.
This rain is our rain, this sea is our sea, the San Lorenzo and the branch of 40, and from Loch Lomond down to the ocean, we'll keep the water flowing clear and free.
There you go. Clear and free. Tribute to Woody Guthrie and This Land Was Made for You and Me.
That's what when I was a mountaineer, that's what you had to do to make sure you weren't dehydrated. Clear and free. Had to urinate.
Piss clear.
Yeah, clear
Piss
and
clear.
free.
That's Burning Man model.
But that
as
wasn't
well.
what you were talking about, right?
Thank you for
No.
that.
No, no.
Although we were talking
no.
about reclaiming toilet water, or using reclaimed water too.
Right.
For example,
Right. Sorry,
another water
I
efficiency.
just got all confused there. For a minute.
Well, we're joking around during the break about other ways that we could save water. Of course, as we were just talking about, Measure P did pass overwhelmingly, 71% here in the city of Santa Cruz. Yes, round of applause all those who were involved and the volunteers. Another issue that's going to come up for sure in local politics is going to stay contentious, going to stay on people's minds, and we look forward to the different ideas that we could use to implement a more efficient and environmentally sensitive water regime.
And of course, in 2 years, there's going to be a vote, up and down vote, by the people on these. There will be an EIR coming out early 2013. And then we have plenty of time to all think and study. And like we just said, it is amazing that during the time that I've been involved with this issue, how many incredible, creative, workable ideas people have come up with to really work on our water situation. So I think it's really on people's mind to solve our water issues.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway,
it's valuable. I mean, considering that agriculture continues to remain the county's #1 industry. I mean, without water, our #1 industry is literally gone to the dust. So it's definitely an important issue.
Yes,
we're a really adaptable community, and I know we're going to come up with solutions that don't imperil the environment and cost loads and loads of money.
Yeah.
Certainly, there's some statistics there about storage seemed like much more efficient of a solution than desal, and certainly there's conservation aspects as well. But speaking of contentious and controversial, Let's launch into another local race, but this time at a county level, the supervisor of the 5th District. You had former Republican Bruce McPherson, now an independent for the November election, and against lifelong Democrat and proudly identified as Democrat, even though traditionally the county supervisor isn't a partisan office. With Bruce's record, certainly, his long-time affiliation with the Republican Party, I think sounded like Eric Hammer wanted to make that an issue, as Bruce really tried to perhaps put a new spin on himself as it came to the electorate and who he was and certainly what he was representing and what he was looking to do here. And I know, Paul, you were working quite closely with the local progressive coalition around Eric Hammer's campaign. I want to get your insight here and kind of just any 2 cents with the results, which, by the way, are at the moment, Bruce is ahead by a scant 26 votes.
Right. Well, he started out ahead by, almost 10%, and then it kind of narrowed, and now we're just waiting to see. I think Mitt Romney wasn't the only person who was shell-shocked by the results of the vote this last week. I mean, even Eric Hammer coming as close as he did, I think, surprised not only Mr. McPherson, but also a number of our Democratic leaders, including city council members and our county treasurer, Democrats who endorsed Bruce McPherson for their own reasons, I'm sure, but there was a general expectation that he would win handily because he had so much money, he had so much name recognition, he had such a history here in our county. And I can't speak, and I wouldn't try to speak for Eric. I mean, I think Eric's success as a candidate has to do more than anything else with his real roots, is the fact that he really does represent that community, especially in San Lorenzo Valley, and his sort of authentic, he's a mensch. He's a guy who has served his community and cares about people. And a lot of us, however, from across the community rallied to support him even before we knew him, because we recognized that replacing Mark Stone on our Board of Supervisors with Bruce McPherson would mean a major shift to the right, regardless of whether Bruce is identified with the Republican Party or not, in the direction of our county government. And the potential we have for progressive leadership on our Board of Supervisors would be really, really damaged by that. So, as you mentioned, we're very close. We're within a few votes at this point. I think 26 votes means that if 13 people were to change their votes, it would be a tie, right? And we have a good 1,000 or so votes yet to be counted, and I think we'll know later this week. But we're optimistic because I know that, like many folks working on the campaign, we really focused on the people who had not gotten their absentee ballots in and reminded them to get those ballots in the last few days. And I want to say, I think the thing that really helped a lot in that race, as well as in the other two races we've been talking about, was the great turnout by young voters. There was a huge surge of people who registered to vote, mostly younger people, just during the last week or two before the election. And I think we have to say to the young folks of Santa Cruz County, thank you.
Thank you.
Not just Santa Cruz County, but the country, the state. I mean, voting around the education issues, voting for President Obama. Fox News and the Sentinel were both counting on you not turning out, and you turned out. So now you have to stay turned out, and you have to stay involved and help us get better at what we do and provide the kind of leadership that we need for these battles that are still coming down the road.
Yeah, it was amazing. When we did our petition drive for Measure P, we registered a lot of people to vote. Right. And a lot of them were actually also young people.
Sure.
And then even after that, the university students themselves, the Democratic Club and others, registered even more. And still, at the end, around October 20th, there were about 1,000 new voters. Even after all the drives that were done, Measure P, University, the Democrats.
That's the most hopeful
we didn't want
sign.
to.
It was amazing how many people are registered. It shows to me there is a new interest in the democracy. We saw it on the film. There's a new, renewed interest and willingness to work for democracy. Yeah. And that gives me hope, not only for what we saw now, and I truly hope that Eric comes out on top after the count and maybe even the recount. But it really shows that people want that kind of change and that kind of hope. And so we keep our fingers crossed.
Yep.
Well, we want to remind folks that this is, again, a live call-in show, 11/11/2012. The number is 831-425-8844. You can pose a question to any of our guests, Paul, Micah, or Matilda, talking anything from the local candidate city council races to the supervisor race to some of the measures on the ballot here in the county. But let's go a little bit bigger, a little bit wider. Speaking of the democratic process and people getting more engaged, we had, I believe, 11 different ballot initiatives, anything from budget reform to preventing massive cuts in education, labeling GMO foods, the death penalty, reforming 3 strikes, increasing penalties for for human trafficking. I mean, there was a whole wide, quite a selection of different issues on the ballot this year. And I want to get any of you guys' responses. Any campaigns that struck you as particularly important, or any victories or defeats that surprised you? I mean, let's talk a little bit about the statewide ballot initiatives. Let's start with 37. What do you say? For me personally, I could say that I was really disappointed. Right. Exactly, my words exactly. I mean, and lost, not as bad as some had predicted, despite being outspent, whatever it was, 6-1 by the kind of the coalition of agribusiness and the chemical companies and some of the research.
The outcome for Proposition 37 was this dramatic example of the corrupting impact of money on our democratic process. That maybe I shouldn't use the term, but what the Supreme Court might call a legitimate, well, they would call it a rape, but they would call it a legitimate exercise of the political power of money. It's illegitimate, and we in California have, and not only California but nationwide, have got to turn that back. On the other hand, the California electorate passed Proposition 30 to say primarily because they cared about what's happening with our schools, with our kids, and they stopped Proposition 32 because they really do seem to understand the importance of unions, especially public service unions, in advocating for the public interest. And we seem to have reached the point maybe where we're getting towards a tipping point with the possible supermajority in California, especially with young people voting, with more and more Latinos voting. And we should mention the new generation of Latino leadership that's stepping forward here in our own county, in Watsonville. It's been elected to the city council. We're reaching a point in California where it's going to be kind of like Santa Cruz in a way, almost a one-party town. And at the state level as well as at the local level, it's then going to be incumbent on us progressives to fight for the soul of the Democratic Party. Is it going to be a progressive organization with a new vision for a new direction for our state as well as our community? Or is it going to be captive to the kinds of business interests and, again, superficial notions of law and order that have seemed to have bogged us down here in Santa Cruz?
I mean, I don't think there wasn't any astounding progress with this election, but it was really, I think people generally said that, they want a government that cares for everyone. I mean, that's the campaign I ran locally. That's the campaign Jerry Brown ran for Prop 30. That's the campaign Obama ran. And I think that's why the Republicans didn't do very well, because people have realized the Republicans are, as per Jerry's quote about Meg Whitman, only out to make their friends rich. Right. So, and I think, we have lots of disagreements ahead about what is progressive and what we prioritize and how we deal with the environment. But I think the voters resoundingly said, look, the government needs to serve everybody. And so, that's, at least we have a good forum to go from.
Before we get you here, we do have a caller. I want to make sure when you call in, you're able to speak. I believe Nancy from Santa Cruz. Are you there, Nancy?
Yeah, I am. Hi, Sandino.
Hey, good evening. How you doing?
I just want to echo what Micah said. It's unprecedented that Jerry Brown worked very hard to pass Measure 30. And I think it should be like that. I think our politicians, particularly Jerry, I've liked him for a long time, when he got out there and joined the unions in helping actively to solve the budget problems. It's something that Schwarzenegger certainly couldn't have accomplished. So I just wanted to, shout out to moonbeam or something. Anyway.
Thank you, Jerry.
Right.
Yeah. Any questions for our panel here before you go? Guess not.
What I wanted to say is that I looked at how did 37 do locally.
Right.
It did extremely well.
Yeah, it was
in the
something
70th, 75,
2 to 1.
77%.
It was above 2 to 1.
It was amazing. So, I have seen, unfortunately, I was very busy with Measure P, so I couldn't do a lot for Proposition 37. But I saw people out there constantly, very, very dignified feeling I got from that campaign, working extremely hard. So I'm very grateful for all those people who worked on 37 in our county. I'm very disappointed that 37 didn't pass, and I'm very disappointed that 34. It's about time that we do away with the death penalty.
Certainly.
It is unconscionable to me that we don't have that. But I was very happy with 30, and the no on 32. And the rest I was very, very happy about.
Another good news with speaking of prison issues and the death penalty, Proposition 36, reforming 3 strikes for nonviolent offenders, seems particularly relevant as we begin to struggle with the question of the kind of the statewide prison system's realignment, as they're calling it, where they're going to be releasing more non-drug, non-violent, considered low-risk offenders. Are going to be bringing these people back to the county. Does anyone have any thoughts on how that might affect, how 36 might affect those efforts? I know, Paul, you've been interested in that, but I don't know if there's anything to be said. It might be too early.
I think it is. I think it remains to be seen how many people are actually going to benefit from that measure, because I think it was pretty narrowly defined. People aren't going to be automatically released. They're going to have to go through a process, and it may only be a few hundred people that are positively helped. I don't know.
Yeah.
But what I would like to say, again, to maybe put a different light on in line with this question about what is democracy, that we still, our most powerful and most important industry in this county and here on the Central Coast depends primarily on the labor of undocumented immigrants.
Certainly.
And our sheriff runs a deportation program for folks in our jail he holds them in our jail who haven't been convicted of any crimes. Governor Brown, just before the election, vetoed a measure that would have at least placed some limitations on that. And so while Latinos have emerged as a demographic that's extremely important and potentially pivotal in the direction of our state, so far anyway, our elected leaders in the city of Santa Cruz, our county sheriff, and at the state level have not broadened our democracy, have not been willing to take leadership to expand participation in that. And I think the Republican Party is realizing at the national level that that's a mistake. And I hope well, let's just say that that's a battle that's still ahead of us, and I think it's going to be necessary that we turn things in a positive direction there if we hope to harvest the possibilities that the demographic change will make possible in California.
Certainly. And Obama, just before the election, coming out with this deferred action kind of policy change, not actual legislation, not actual real, is an executive order, if I understand.
That's right.
Which essentially allowed certain people, kind of like a DREAM Act light, if you will. The DREAM Act, of course, being a path to citizenship and full participation for people who qualify under a certain age. But kind of seems like that wasn't going to go anywhere either on the state level or under the do-nothing Republican Congress. So Obama kind of just before the election came out and did that. And now a lot of people are calling for him to really take it a step further. I mean, if he had lost the election, Romney had stated he would have just completely shut that program down.
That's right.
Meaning the difference between united families and bright futures for a lot of people, or deportations and a furthering of the kind of immigrant detention complex.
You could call it a DREAM Act light because it doesn't involve a path to citizenship, but in some ways it's better than the DREAM Act, broader than the DREAM Act, because the DREAM Act only applies to those kids, those young folks who go to college.
Right.
The DACA program, the Deferred Action Program, applies to 10 times as many people, to working class kids, the kids who've dropped out of high school if they go back to high school, the kids who dropped out of high school are now in their 20s if they go to a GED program. So it's just the kind of thing we should be promoting as a way to undermine the attractiveness of gang activity and so on. So again, I think we're really lacking positive leadership and an understanding that this is not only a concern for the Latino community. This is a concern for all of us.
Absolutely.
They're all our kids. We're all affected by the public safety issues that the gangs represent. But even more important, this land is their land. This land is our land.
Right,
we're all brothers and sisters.
Well, I eat myself, and given that they grow most of my food, I feel like I should, in some ways, reach out.
It's a great image on the internet. Shows a family gathered around the kitchen table saying, "Thank you, Jesus, for this food," and then you got a farm worker down below saying, "De nada." Jesus, right?
Right, and the other thing is that if we have an educated population, whether they're documented or not,
that's right.
At some point, 20 years from now, I may be in a nursing home. I would like a person who helps me to be able to read and write well so I can get the right medication.
Right.
I mean, it's public safety. You're talking in the streets with the gangs, but I'm also talking about the people in the service industry. A lot of Latinos are in the service industry. I would like them to have the opportunity to be educated and doing better service to all of us.
Well, it's striking because we've been running clinics, workshops to help people complete their application packet just in the last few months. And I've seen hundreds of these young folks, people high school but also in their 20s. And actually most of them are pretty well educated. They read and they write. They're better than I am on Facebook and on Twitter. And they're prepared to be competent citizens. And also to be productive workers already. It's just that we don't legally they can't drive and they can't get a work permit. So they already are ready to be assets to our community.
We don't offer the path to really fulfill their dreams, their hopes, being an integral part of our society.
Documented or undocumented people, it seems like there's really way too many people with not enough economic opportunities, not enough educational opportunities. We've seen our entire economy shift away from having a lot of decent blue-collar jobs and manufacturing, which might be there as the traditional, safety release valve, if you will, for the people that aren't going to be going to the college track. Those jobs aren't there. More fierce competition for the ones that are. It really seems like there's a whole question of priorities and what we're doing for documented or undocumented population.
Right. I'm hoping that this election will, create a shift of people looking around and realize that we all have to care for each other. Instead of because the pie's shrinking a little bit. America's a little bit less rich, but instead of, trying to figure out who to blame or how to, Prop 13, how to make sure we don't pay any taxes or anything. I'd like it if we could look around and say, hey, how do we work together? How do we share what we have? And I'm hopeful that's what this election represents.
On that note, we are approaching the end of our show here, so I want to give a last-minute opportunity for any of you who might have a pressing question that you want for one of our panelists. Really quick now, 425-8844. But while we wait to see if anyone takes me up on the offer, any last statements? We're going to go around maybe just 30, 45 seconds each. What should we be looking out for?
Well, what I'd like people to do is on the issue of diesel, continue to study it, come to the LAFCO meeting, come to the work. There are a lot of workshops by the engineers for water alternatives, and I would say go to dieselalternatives.org, .org, and read up on it. In 2 years,
we'll vote on it again.
That's right.
Micah, what are we looking forward to?
Don't leave me.
I'll be at your house later, don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, good. It's been scary. I've been going around and saying, hey, congratulations. I know you're going to do a great job. It's like, no, I'm not going to do anything. It's all of us together.
That's right.
And, as an activist, I've been very aware of that. I've been, organizing for 20 years in Santa Cruz. But as a city council member, I just feel like I'm just a different part of our collective visions and our struggles. And so, we're all going to be in this together.
Set up your weekly or monthly meetings, and people show up.
All right, are you signing up, Matilda?
Absolutely.
All right, okay.
I'll poke you.
All right, good.
Paul, last minute thoughts?
Well, I'll just say, I think, as I've been maybe suggesting during the whole show, is that the important battles are the ones to come. And the important leadership is the leadership that hasn't stepped forward yet. And that maybe that's you listening in the audience. We need more leadership. We need not only to be clear about what we're against, but we also need to be clear about what we're for.
Seems like a definite struggle here to redefine kind of our nation's priorities. The battle, like you said, not only for the soul of the Democratic Party, but certainly the soul of our country. You know,
and our community.
I want to quote Martin Luther King here, just to finish, and say, you know, we have to confront the triple evils of poverty, racism, and militarism. And it seems like America has just stuck its head in the sand there. And on that note, I want to thank all of the staff and the volunteers. I want to thank Charlie Phillips and Ken Nobler. I want to thank our guests, Paul, Micah, Matilda, and I want to thank you for watching Santa Cruz and all of you on the internet at communitytv.org. Thank you so much. I'm Sandino Gomez. Have a great night.